What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Today we are taking our turbo K24 swapped Subaru BRZ to the dyno. Now, it already got picked up by the tow truck this morning. It's already dropped off there, and I'm on my way to meet up with the tuner and make some power. Stick around. All right, so we are at ARD Motorsports. My guy, Phil, is gonna hook us up. He is our tuner extraordinaire. God, it's bright outside today. Phil, how we doing? We had probably 7 or 8 different warnings for the throttle position or throttle cable being disabled. Basically, it seems like for whatever reason, it's like not receiving a signal from the electronic, drive-by-wire throttle body. So just kind of troubleshooting, doing some initial setup stuff, and eventually we're gonna get it going. But yeah, at some point you'll see the interior. It is still pretty much fully disassembled. There's almost nothing put back except for like the center console piece. So once we get this thing hooked up and running, we'll see if we can't make some power. Okay, quick update here. So we had to kind of tweak a couple of things and rewire a couple of things, but the engine is running pretty smooth up to this point. No major issues, which is very good. That's the thing I was concerned about. Like, did I completely screw something up here to the point where it's like unusable? So everything's looking decent for right now. It idles smooth. We had to change a lot of the wiring maps. The throttle body wiring for some reason wasn't being picked up or something like that, so all the maps got like completely screwed. I think Phil was saying that the maps for the throttle were not set up for drive-by wire. They were set up for like a throttle cable, a manual throttle. So I don't know why it was set up in that way, but that's what it was. So one of the other issues that we identified was that my wideband sensor did not have power or ground, and so it was saying like condensation error. So we were trying to figure out what was going on with that, and I remembered that there were these 2 red and black wires as part of the wiring package from K-Power. Now, in their installation guide, they did not say anything about what to do with these. I should have known, like, hey, it's a power and a ground, you're supposed to do something with this, but I completely overlooked it. But fortunately, I left this whole trim piece just undone because I had a feeling we were going to need to get back here at some point during the tuning process. So thankfully I did that. So all we did was we disconnected the cigarette lighter, which is, in the glove box right here. Oh, there we go. This guy. So we basically disconnected that, and I have absolutely no intention to use that cigarette lighter at all. If I ever need one, there's another one here in the center console. So if I have to have one, I can just use that. And once we disconnected this cigarette lighter, we just used, we took the red and black wires that are part of the wideband wiring that came from the whole K-Power electronics package, and we just added the push-in sort of male connectors on both sides, plugged it in there, and then now the wideband controller itself has power and ground, so then that fixed the wideband issue. So now that we've got all of that sort of figured out, one of the other things that we noticed pretty much immediately as soon as I pulled it up, the wastegate is supposed to have what's called a firing ring, which I've personally never heard of, but then again, this is the first time I'm doing a lot of this stuff. And what it is this little ring right here. This is one that they happened to have on hand, so we're just gonna run with it. And after I looked at this, I was like, you know what? I think I had one of these with my wastegate in the box, but I didn't know what it was, and I thought it was just supposed to be a V-band clamp if you wanted to run a smaller wastegate recirculation pipe. I had no idea what that was. So I'm a big dumb idiot. So anyway, so now what we're doing, now that all of this sort of bass tune stuff is handled, we've got a fan. We're just trying to cool off the wastegate itself so we can pull that off, get that firing spring put in, because currently the wastegate's just dumping constantly. So we just have a permanent exhaust leak. So once we get that firing ring put in on the wastegate, we should be good to go to actually, you know, strap it down and get these wheels turning and make some power. Okay, so we actually ended up having to spend quite a lot of time bleeding the coolant system again. Essentially, my thermostat was not opening. Phil spent a lot of time on this, and you know, I appreciate everything that he did to basically get this thing going. So essentially, we found that the block was almost completely empty of coolant. Like, we drained the coolant, took the thermostat out, and there was no coolant like in the thermostat housing. So that's not great. So he ended up drilling the 1/8" hole that I put in it, drilled it out wider, and the 1/8" hole that has the check valve on it, drilled that out wider, put it back in. We actually added 2 gallons extra of coolant compared to what was in there originally, or at least what I had put in there. And when I bled this coolant system the other night, I could have swore that the thermostat was open because the lower radiator hose got pretty damn hot. But I'm sure I screwed that up. Like, that's 100% on me. That's absolutely my fault for not doing more due diligence. It was, I don't know, 9:30, 10 o'clock by the time I finished bleeding the coolant. So that was a big pain. But anyway, we've got this thing set up, strapped down on the front and the back. And now hopefully we should be able to get this thing up and running and actually moving with the wheels turning. And then eventually here pretty soon, hopefully we're going to be able to make some power. So I know it's loud as hell in here. So, oh god. So on that last run, you might have noticed, I don't know how well this microphone is picking up the audio. It's loud, extremely loud in there. So you might have noticed that the exhaust suddenly got louder on decel, and that's because the exhaust fell off. So, got that reassembled. It looks like there's a very small fuel leak potentially, just like a very slow drip. I don't know if it's because of the bigger pump and the stock lines. Everything is basically connected the way that K-Power said to connect it, so I don't know. We're gonna keep troubleshooting and we'll keep going. Okay, so I told Phil when we started that I did not know what size wastegate spring was in the wastegate. Take these off. Because the ones that Pulsar sent me for the turbo were all same color but very different sizes. And so I had no idea. It turns out it's only making about 4 pounds of boost. So lines up that it's about a 4-pound spring. On his last kind of ramp up as he's continuing to sort of dial things in, the throttle got disabled for some reason. Something in the ECU, or it's not getting power, or it's not seeing a reading, so it essentially disabled the throttle altogether. So you can push it to the floor and it does nothing. So, more troubleshooting. 250, not bad. What do you have the red line set at? Just curious. So we ended up kind of screwing around with the wastegate a whole lot. Basically, the springs that I bought last minute off of Amazon are trash. So don't buy wastegate springs on Amazon. Top tip. So we replaced it with a 14-pound spring that he had in stock. And so I'll just buy that spring off of him for, you know, however much it costs. So apparently he's saying that it's still not making very much boost. The spring that was in there was only making 4 PSI, the original like Pulsar one that I had installed when I brought the car here. So, yeah, I don't know. It might just be a bad wastegate seal, or I really don't know. It's just not making boost right now. It's only like 5-6 pounds maybe, so. It's plenty loud though, that's for sure.
It's like 6 PSI.
6 PSI. The what?
I don't want to change the spring again. But I'm just going to try to do it right now. And then we'll change the spring.
So on 6 pounds, it's only making 6 PSI right now on the current spring. So that's 289. So close to 300. Obviously we'd like to be close to 400 is ideal. That's kind of the target we're going for, but we've spent well over an hour and a half rebuilding the wastegate with the different springs. So still only made 6 pounds of boost. Not sure where all the air's going. Okay, well, Phil's got to run for the night. It's already been a full day, and he's already spent way too much time just fixing the problems on my car. So he's got to go tonight. I have to go to work tomorrow, and he's got people wanting to come in every single day for tuning. So I told him, don't wait around for me at this point to, you know, finish the tune. Like, if you need to get it done in the morning and then move on to like more important things, or other customers are waiting for tuning. So like, I can't just prioritize 100% of his time for the next 3 days. It's still only making 6 PSI for whatever reason. It's probably just a kind of crap wastegate, or we didn't test the wastegate springs correctly on the bench. So I don't know, it's just been a really big pain today, just finding out that the coolant system wasn't bled when I was almost positive that the lower radiator hose was it was super hot Sunday night when I was bleeding it. So I was like, oh, for sure, it's done, it's good to go. Apparently not. So we spent 2 hours draining it, doing a whole vacuum bleed, and then again needed 2 extra gallons of coolant to actually fill up the whole system. So just kind of problems after problems. So he's gonna try and get it to like 12 PSI equivalent on the spring, or 14 PSI equivalent on the spring. So just keeping our fingers crossed for 400. So long story short, I got work tomorrow. He's got to go now. So we're gonna come back tomorrow, and hopefully by the time I show up, things done. As much as I would like to, you know, hang around and see every single power pole, it's just not unfortunately not going to work out that way. So anyway, we'll see you guys tomorrow. Well, I realized I didn't get any footage from the last day at the shop, and things are not actually great. Obviously, I'm back home now. So we got to the point where we made 307 at the wheels, and it was only making about 6 pounds of boost. Now, it probably still would have made a little bit more than 307 if VTEC had been actuating. Basically, Phil, my tuner, was trying to figure out why VTEC wasn't kicking in, and so the requirements for VTEC to actuate have to be a certain amount of oil pressure above a certain amount of RPM, and it also might be a certain load registered on the throttle position. I think those are 2 or 3 of the main requirements. So the reason that it wasn't opening, or the VTEC wasn't actuating, is because of the fact that we did not have enough oil pressure. That's a big deal. Basically, the software was showing us that it was making like 15 psi of oil pressure at idle, and as you increase the RPMs, it basically wasn't making any additional oil pressure. It just stayed at 15 to 20 psi as you got to like 4,000 or 5,000 RPM, which is not good. Obviously, your oil pump chain is connected to the crank, so as the crank speeds up, the oil pump is supposed to speed up and push more oil through the system and make more oil pressure. So something is not working properly. And we have a few ideas about what it could be, but most likely the engine is going to have to come out of the car. Yeah. The 3 main things that could be causing this type of a low oil pressure situation would be a bad oil pump, which is unlikely considering the Type S oil pump that we got from K-Power is brand new. So it's unlikely, but it's technically possible. The oil restrictor bolt that we installed in the bottom of the block could have come loose or come out, and that's allowing too much oil to circulate. If you recall, there's a little oil jet in the bottom of the engine block that needs to be removed and then plugged when you do the conversion from the stock oil pump to the Type S oil pump. And that's because of the fact that with the stock oil pump, normally the big sort of dual like shaft balancers inside of the stock oil pump sit right on top of where that oil jet is. So the body of the oil pump blocks the oil from draining through that. But obviously without that big body, the oil would just come through that gap or come through that restrictor and be a big problem. So if that bolt that I installed has come loose or come out altogether, that could cause very low oil pressure. Now, the third main thing that is kind of the worst case scenario is that the crankshaft rod bearings are bad or spun or toast or whatever. The engine is not knocking, as in there's no rod knock, so I don't think that it has spun a bearing to the point where there's play in the rod connection to the crankshaft on one of the 4 cylinders, but it's possible that the bearings are toast, which wouldn't make a whole lot of sense because I did use 5W30 oil, which is lighter than I should have used, but for NA engines or very light turbo applications that I would say if you're going to go turbo, you want to go to heavier, maybe like 10W40, which is what I'm going to be running eventually. But considering we only made 6 pounds of boost and we only made 300 horsepower and I don't even know how much torque, maybe 220, 230 foot-pounds of torque, I'm having a hard time believing that we put enough stress on the engine for the oil to be the factor that would have caused the bearings to fail. Is it possible? Yes. Do I think it's the root cause? No, but Phil thinks that that's most likely what the issue is that the bearings are gone. Which would mean either rebuilding that engine or getting another engine and transferring all of the new timing chain components and the 50-degree VTEC cam gear and the new timing cover, oil pan, like everything transferred from the current engine over to a new one that I would get. And of course, there's a couple of other small things that like have a small chance of contributing, like my oil sandwich plate, or if the VTEC solenoid filter is plugged, something like that could have an impact on it, but I don't know, small percentage on those. But it could be affecting it, so we're gonna look at that as well. At this point, it's been a few days of sort of back and forth between Phil working on it and then me coming after work and helping him sort of get it all figured out. But at this point, in order to look at those like 3 main big issues, the pump, the oil restrictor, and the bearings, we would have to take the oil pan off, and we can't take the oil pan off without removing the engine from the car. Because of the fact that it's mounted so low, basically the oil pan only hovers like an inch or 3/4 of an inch above the subframe. So even if we could get the bolts off, there's no way we would be able to get the oil pan off. So, engine's got to come out, which really sucks. It's been 2.5 years of building this thing, and I thought I was about to cross the finish line and be done with it. So yeah, that's kind of where we sit. Phil is going to have his guys pull the engine start of next week or whenever we can fit it into their schedule, because you know, they weren't accounting for this amount of labor, right? It was supposed to be a tuning session. It's not supposed to be a full engine out rebuilds type of a service. So we'll have to see where I can fit into their schedule. And yeah, feels pretty bad. I don't even really know what else to say. So yeah. We're just gonna have to get the engine out, see what the problem is, and I'm really hoping it's not the rod bearings. I really hope just that little oil restrictor bolt is loose or fell out and is just draining oil past it, and we can just snug that baby back up and be good to go. But yeah, so it's been a long few days. I need to get some rest and I need to edit all of these videos. So we'll see you guys on the next one. Hopefully I'll have some better news.